Welcome to APSS Bookselling University. This course is Publicity with a Purpose, making your efforts count, and I'm your instructor, Jared Kuritz. As a topic expert, I am the managing partner of Strategies Literary Public Relations, the director of the La Jolla Writers Conference, and the co-publisher of Nightstand Press. With Strategies, we work on literary development, business modeling, and marketing and public relations with clients of all genres and every level of experience. As the director of the La Jolla Writers Conference, for the last 18 years, we have put on a national conference that celebrates the art, craft, and business of writing. And as the co-publisher of Nightstand Press, we are excited to bring small and big books to market in nearly every genre. The goals for today's course are understanding your business model and goals, identifying what types of publicity efforts make the most sense for you, and providing examples of specific promotional activities, the how, when, and why. So, what is your business model? This is a common question that I ask in nearly every course I teach because it's applicable to nearly every topic, whether it's business, PR, marketing, or anything and everything in between. So let's talk about the two different models for a moment. On the left, we have a realtor. Let's call her Sue. She's a realtor in Southern California where it's very, very competitive. And on the right, we have Joe. Joe's a fiction author. Sue and Joe's business models are very different. When we talk about a business model, we talk about what it means to create, deliver, and capture value from what we're bringing to the marketplace. For Sue, as a realtor, she's writing a nonfiction book that's called 10 Questions Every First-Time Home Buyer Should Ask. For Joe on the right, he's a fiction author. Let's say he writes crime fiction, and all he wants to do is churn out 1 or 2 books a year, send his books off to his agent, let his agent handle the business with the publisher, and collect his advance and royalty checks. For Sue, she's not really interested in retail sales of her book. What she really wants to do is use that book to generate new clients as a realtor, to help build her veracity and credibility in the neighborhood. So for each of them, how they plan to create, deliver, and capture value from the marketplace are very different. And that's the question you have to ask yourself when it comes to a business model. For Sue, she's creating a book. For Joe, he's creating a book. Sue's planning on delivering it either by hand when she hands it to prospective clients, or she's planning on giving it away for free on a website in order to capture a new list of clientele, or she's planning on potentially giving it away in bulk to people in the community at community events and so forth to let them know that she is a realtor. For Joe, he's planning on delivering that to his agent. The agent will deliver it to the publisher, and the publisher will eventually deliver it to consumers via conventional distribution networks for books. That's retail outlets. Again, Sue's staying completely away from the retail outlets. In terms of capturing value, Sue is looking to do what we just talked about. Build new clientele by giving hand copies away to people, maybe giving away e-copies or even mailing out print copies to people who are willing to give her data information like their address or their email on her website. She's even looking to capture value from having it raise credibility that she is now an author of a book, so that when she pitches local media to come on and talk about the current state of the housing market, they pick her over one of her colleagues because she happens to have had a book that she's authored now. For Joe, he's looking to capture value solely from retail sales and from any advance he gets for the books he writes. Both authors, both producing books, very different in what they're creating, very different in how they're delivering it, and very different in how they're capturing value from what they're bringing to the marketplace. But this question, in terms of your overall business model, these 3 questions need to be asked in order to successfully promote a book. Create, deliver, and capture value. What do you plan to produce? Are you producing a print book, an ebook, audiobook, workbook, a data capture-based website, a membership website? Are you doing webinars or something else? How do you plan to deliver it? Are you going to do direct sales through your website? Are you going to have a traditional fulfillment house or traditional distribution? Are you planning on doing print on demand where people can order your book off of Amazon and Amazon will print, package, and ship it, and there's no out-of-pocket expense for you? Are you planning on doing a hybrid or combination of those things? Let's say for retail purposes, you let it go print on demand through CreateSpace or Ingram Spark or both. And then you also have the opportunity to do specialty market sales where people can directly order from your website in bulk, and you will print, package, and ship those books through a offset printer or print-on-demand company of your choice once you receive that order. You certainly can do a hybrid or a combination of these things. Or are you planning on delivering it solely through bulk or specialty market orders? In that case, you want to have small orders set up through print-on-demand, and you also want to have a printer that can handle large offset print runs as well. What type of value are you looking to capture? Retail sales, like we kind of talked about with Joe. Marketing or advertising tool, like we talked about with Sue the Realtor. Back of the room sales. Are you planning on doing speaking engagements and then selling the book back of the room or packaging the book as part of your speaking fee? Are you using it for list building? In Sue's case, if she offers that book for free on her website and gets people to just put in their email and address in order to get a copy of the book for free, she's building a list of potential clients. Specialty market sales. Are you planning on trying to sell your book into schools in bulk? Are you planning on looking to sell your books to organizations that are focused on your messaging or whatever the theme of your book is? Media exposure. For Sue, she's certainly going to be more likely to be picked by a producer to be on local TV to talk about the state of the housing market if she is an author than not. Client acquisition. For Sue, again, this goes back to client acquisition. If you go to an accountant, if you go to a lawyer, if you go to a realtor, if they are a published author, they get a little boost in terms of their credibility or veracity in the eyes of the average person. And again, we just discussed credibility and veracity. There are very few things in this world that can immediately bolster your credibility or veracity than being the author of a book. How do you plan to reach your target audience? This is a very important question because it really will determine whether you should be doing PR, marketing, advertising, all three, or a combination thereof. So what is PR? Public relations puts you in a position to develop and maintain a relationship and reputation with your target audience. This is about you, or a representative of your company, or a representative of the product, actually putting themselves out there. If you're an author, if people hear you in an interview, even if it has nothing to do with your book, if they like what you have to say, they connect with you, what you have to say resonates with them, and then at the end, whoever's interviewing you mentions that you're the author of a book, a lot of those people are going to go look up your book because they liked you, so they're going to be interested in your book. It can be even more direct than that if you position yourself as an expert on a particular topic and are on local TV or local radio speaking as an expert on a topic that's relevant to your book. They're even more likely to then look up your book. But again, PR is not about selling your product. It's about you selling yourself, or your representative selling themselves and putting themselves out there so that people are interested in what they have to say or what you have to say and will then go look up your book. Marketing is the positioning of a product or service to induce an action, whether that's a sale, a sign-up, sharing content, whatever it happens to be. That's what marketing is all about. Now, in this particular case, when it comes to marketing, you can actually be the product. Your book can be the product. A widget you've created can be the product. Understanding, though, that marketing is more about the sale, more about the promotion of the product than about the promotion of you as a representative, as a voice for that product, like PR is. Advertising, simply put, is paid exposure for your product or service. That's where you're getting pay to play. I want my book to be in a prime location in a bookstore, then I'm paying co-op. I want to be on local radio, I'm going to pay for a radio advertisement. That's what advertising is all about. There are lots of different public relations, marketing, and advertising activities you can do to be successful. I'm going to give you a handful of them in each category today, talk about the purpose of each one, and the do's and don'ts. As you'll probably notice, there's a bit of a crossover and repetitiveness to this, so I won't completely bore you by reading the same sentence over and over again too often. When it comes to public relations activities, the first activity you can consider is radio. It's a great way to connect with your target audience, build content for other platforms like social media and your blog. You can share calls to action, whether you want them to sign up for something, buy something, or take any other type of action, and you can position yourself as an expert. In terms of the do's and don'ts, you do want to prepare segment topics and outlines for producers. It's the number one way to acquire good radio interviews. What you don't want to do is expect to be able to sell your product. They do not like to do an infomercial for your products. This is true with radio as well. With TV as well. The expected exchange is that you will come on, give a quality segment, speak about a topic that's of interest to their audience. In exchange for that, the host or producer will mention your product multiple times on air without you having to do any selling of it. This doesn't mean you can't reference your product. This doesn't mean you can't say things about it. It just means you want to be very careful not to be doing a lot of selling, because they'll either cut your interview short or never have you back on again. With TV, it's the same thing. You want to connect with your target audience, build content for other platforms like your social media and blog. You can share calls to action and position yourself as an expert. Again, the do's and don'ts are the same. Prepare segment topics and outlines, and don't expect to be able to sell your product on air. For print and digital interviews and articles, this is a great opportunity for you to also connect with the target audience, build content for your social media platforms, share your calls to action, position yourself as an expert, but in addition to all of that, hyperlink back to your call to action, especially on digital platforms. In this case, if you are contributing to an article as an expert, or you're being interviewed for an article, you can often ask them if they will mention your website and link back to it. There's no guarantee that they will, but it's certainly an option for you to ask. You do want to pitch timely and relevant topics. Pay attention to what you're pitching and why you're pitching it. And don't expect to be able to sell your product. Again, you are contributing as an expert contributor. You're not contributing as the representative of product X. Digital bylined articles. Again, you can connect with your target audience. You get to create regular communication. If you are a contributor to, let's say, HuffingtonPost.com, ESPN.com, Yahoo News, as a regular contributor, you're able to create regular communication with your target audience. You can build content for other platforms such as social media and your blog, meaning whatever you write for those external publications, you can also republish on your own blog or link to it. You can share calls to action. You can position yourself as an expert, and you can hyperlink back to your CTAs. You have a lot more flexibility when you're writing and publishing the content on these external sites rather than having someone write an article that includes you or is about you. In terms of the do's and don'ts, do contribute to the targeted platforms. Do not allow long-term exclusivity. Some platforms say we want to be exclusive with this content for 30 days. That's okay. But if they want only exclusive content, only stuff that is never going to be published anywhere else, stuff you can't even use on your own website, unless it's an amazing opportunity with an amazing publication that exactly hits your target audience, that's a lot to ask for, especially if you're giving this content for free. And in most cases, if you want to be a regular contributor for bylined articles to a digital publication, you're doing it for free. And I don't want to say free in the sense that you're not getting any value of it. They're not giving you any money. What you are getting is free exposure. Just ask yourself how much it would cost to place an ad in one of these publications, and then say, okay, that's value right there. And then ask yourself, how much value am I getting by accessing their target audience, all of their readers, and all of their established visitors to their website? So there is absolute value. You're not necessarily getting paid for it. Do not contribute to platforms that would not allow you to have a profile, tagline, or hyperlinks. It's kind of pointless. The whole idea of you contributing to an external publication is that they have a built-in target audience that to some degree matches up with your target audience, and so you want them to be able to know who you are by having a profile. You want to be able to put a tagline at the bottom of anything you write that says, Joe Schmo is the author of blank. For more information, reach out to him at blanketyblank.com or check out his book at blanketyblank.com. Again, you're not doing a full infomercial for yourself, but a simple 1 or 2 sentence tagline at the end is perfectly acceptable and customary in the industry. And to be able to put a hyperlink back to your website or the Amazon page where people can buy your book or so forth, again, is perfectly reasonable. So I would not contribute to platforms that do not allow you to do that, because it defeats the purpose of you being able to network for yourself. Last example of a public relation activity that you can be doing for yourself is social media and blogging. This allows you to connect with your target audience, create regular communication, build networking, Share your calls to action, position yourself as an expert, and hyperlink to your calls to action. Okay? You do develop a strategy and schedule, contribute regularly, share, like, comment on things that you like, offer freebies, post interactive content, use the platforms to leverage access to your target audience. I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute. Things you don't want to do: constantly develop original content, participate in negative interaction, sell too much, assume people will find you, only post text. You always want to have a picture, if not something else, along with your post. Spend more than 40 minutes a day. If you're spending more than 20 to 40 minutes a day on social media, then you're spending too much time. And that's why we want to develop a schedule and a plan. And then don't expect to generate direct sales from social media. Social media can be a path to calls to action. It can lead to kind of a 2 or 3 steps away from a sale. But most people don't open up their wallets off of social media. That's just the reality of it. There are some exceptions to that rule, but in most cases it doesn't happen. So let's go back to the purpose of social media for a minute. And we say build networking. I'm going to give you one example of a great way to build networking through social media, and you can extrapolate on that for your own project. Here's an example. I'm a first-time fiction author. I've written my first book, and it is a suspense thriller. That's an incredibly competitive genre, and there are a lot of successful people in that genre. And what you'd like to do is tap into the audience of some of those successful people. Well, there are a couple of different ways to do it. Let me give you an example on social media where we're accomplishing several of our do's and don'ts, as well as marketing yourself very well. Let's say author X, I love using that example obviously, but let's say author X is a suspense thriller writer. He's got 17 or 18 New York Times best-selling books. He's got a built-in audience. People love him, and he does very well for himself in terms of number of book sales and so forth. Well, his audience represents the exact people you want reading your book. There's no reason why you don't contact author X, and pretty much every author can be reached through their website, whether it goes to their publicist or them directly. Trust me when I say I know enough New York Times bestselling authors that manage their own websites or are very attuned to what's coming to their websites that they will hear from you. Contact them through their website. Sometimes their email address is there. Sometimes it's a contact us page. Sometimes it's a PR contact. Write them and say, "Dear so-and-so, I'd love to interview you for my blog. If you're open to it, here are the 5 questions I'd love answers to." And you put the 5 questions right in there. It's, whatever 5 questions you want to come up with. What inspired you to be a writer? What's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten about writing? How did you learn to write suspense scenes, and whatever other questions you want to ask. You come up with 5 questions to that person, and you ask them to email you back the answers, and that's great. I have done this enough times to know that you get responses from about 80% of the people you reach out to. That's a great return on your time investment, and it doesn't take you very much time to do this. So you reach out to 10 or 15 of these authors a week. When you hear back from them, you clean up the interview, you post it on your blog. Done. That's free content in your blog that you don't have to come up with that original content. You then send them the link to your blog, and you say, thank you so much for the interview. Here's the link to my blog, to the blog interview. Feel free to share it on your social media accounts. Then you go to their social media accounts and you do the same thing, but you spoon feed them the information so that all they have to do is hit the share button on their social media accounts. Here's what happens. Of the 80% of the people that respond to you, close to 80% of those people end up taking the complete action, which is they share it on their own blog, they share it on their social media accounts, and sometimes they will even take another step and say more about you on their social media accounts. In any event, what they're doing is by promoting themselves and telling their audience about the interview that they've had and directing people to that interview, they are now sending people to your social media and to your website, which is driving their built-in traffic, their established traffic, to you and to your website, making people aware of you and what you've written and everything else. It's a very simple activity. It's done through social networking, and it's an effective use of your time because it's creating content for you that you don't have to originally come up with yourself. It's helping you penetrate a target audience that already exists in your genre, and it's helping you network with someone you otherwise wouldn't have access to. So there's just one example from a social media perspective that can truly help you in terms of public relations. Now, that takes let's say 2 or 2.5 steps away from what would turn into a sale. But it is certainly an obvious way of driving traffic and developing new readership. So let's talk about marketing activities. Same concept. We're going to talk about the activity, the purpose of that activity, and the do's and don'ts. And again, a lot of the do's and don'ts are repetitive, so I won't bore you too much with repeating myself. Let's talk about endorsements as a marketing activity. What do endorsements help you do? Well, they help raise your credibility and veracity. If a well-known author or someone from a well-known organization says something good about you, your product, your book, whatever it happens to be, it's going to raise your credibility and veracity. It also helps align you with organizations or individuals, even if they're not super well known. If you have written a children's book and you have 3 different educators endorse the back of that book, and they happen to be, vice principals at elementary schools or so forth, maybe an elementary school that no one's ever heard of, and maybe obviously a vice principal who no one's ever heard of, except for people immediately in that community. But because you have 3 different educators that have said something quality about your book, and it's a book for children, it's going to immediately align yourself with the type of people and organizations that you're marketing to, meaning parents, school teachers, and so forth. So you have to think smart about your endorsements. The do's and don'ts. Do solicit endorsements from high-profile people or organizations. Don't choose extremes unless it suits your business model, meaning you don't want to choose someone super left or super right or any type of extreme unless it really suits what you're writing, because what you're going to do is you're going to put yourself in a position to kind of be polarizing to the people in the middle and the people on the other end. That doesn't mean that if the President of the United States or somebody like that wants to endorse your book, you don't take it, but you've got to consider the pros and cons of doing something like that. With reviews, there are 3 different types of reviews I like to talk about. There are trade reviews, targeted reviews, and push reviews. Trade reviews should be submitted well in advance of the release to market and are intended to provide your product with added credibility. New York Times, Wall Street Journal, LA Times, USA Today, Kirkus, all these places help raise the credibility and veracity of your book because people have heard of them, because they are institutions in this industry. Again, most of those places need to be pitched or submitted for review far in advance. We're talking 3 to 4 months ahead of your publication date. Targeted reviews can be submitted pre or post-release and should be sent to media, publications, print and digital, bloggers, freelancers, and everybody else who have established audiences comprised of your target buyers and or users. Target reviewers are intended to make target buyers and users aware of your product. It's really simply put, I don't care if it's a mommy blog that gets 3,000 visitors a day, or it's, ESPN that gets a few million visitors a day, or it's anybody in between. If you have an organization or an outlet that's interested in reviewing your book, send it to them, because for the cost of that book, let's say that book costs you a couple of dollars, even if it's a smaller blog, you never know the trickle effect that that's going to have. You never know, even if it's read by 20 people, 30 people, or 50 people, or 5,000 or 5 million people, it only takes one spark to ignite and create some significant momentum. So don't send blindfolded. Pitch everybody in that category. When it comes to targeted reviews, something we do in our office that's unique to the industry is that for trade reviews, you send out based on the norms and the requirements that they have, and they're very rigid. They don't like to be bothered. But for targeted reviewers and push reviewers, we actually pitch all of these people individually to see if they're interested in the book, and then we only mail out a copy of the book once we receive confirmation from them that they would like a copy. That saves our clients product, it saves us time, and frankly, it creates a relationship and a tacit invitation for us to follow up with that person. So it gives us a reason to be able to follow up and say, hey, did you get the book? And then follow up again and say, hey, what'd you think of it? Or where is it in your, in your order of your the stack of books in your desk, and when do you think you'll get to it, and so forth. So again, with targeted push reviews, pitch them and then submit them based on request, and you'll get a much higher rate of return on reviews. Again, with targeted reviews, the goal of those reviews is to use the existing audience that these different individuals or publications have to raise awareness of your book, to drive an existing audience to a retail page to purchase your book. Then comes push reviews. With push reviews, they should be solicited pre and post release, and they should be solicited from retail reviews that are intended to be the last step in encouraging people to buy your book. So if I've heard about your book from a friend, or I've heard about your book from a blog I've read, or some other way that I have found my way to a retail purchase page for your book, because the overwhelming majority of books are purchased online now, I'm sitting there, like, think of yourself in this situation with any product you're thinking about buying. You're online, you're on the purchase page, you're looking at the product. What do you look at next? You look at the reviews. Most of us do it. We look at the reviews, we see what people have to say. A lot of times we look at the highs and the lows and the average and what have you. And then at that point in time, we're either pushed to buy the product based on the reviews, or pushed to not buy it based on those reviews. And that's why I call these push reviews. They have their place, they're important to have, and you want to balance those out with targeted reviews and trade reviews. The do's and don'ts. Do submit for trade reviews even if you self-publish. There's a huge misconception here that self-published books can't get reviewed by the trade reviewers. I'm here to tell you from personal experience, having been in this industry for 17 plus years, that's absolutely not true. The book has to be packaged and presented properly. It has to fit all the norms and expectations. And in addition to all of that, it has to be submitted based on the requirements of those trade reviewers, but they absolutely can and do get reviews. Do make sure you follow the proper timeline and procedures for doing so. We just talked about that. Do actively submit to targeted and push reviewers. Do not expect people to simply find and review your product on their own. It doesn't happen. I mean, friends and family, yes, but even with friends and family, if you give them all copies of your book, a lot of times you got to kick them in the butt and say, hey, please review my book on Amazon. Otherwise, they simply won't do it. So the expectation that random people will is also far-fetched. Another activity from a marketing perspective are giveaways and promotions. These allow you, the purpose of these is to market specific products, events, services, and so forth, to upsell to bigger ticket items. You know, if you're giving something away that you then captured the person's data by giving it away through your website, you can email them through Constant Contact or something like that down the road and say, hey, you liked, this, how about this, or what have you. Data capture, contact list building. Again, if we think about Sue the realtor, she wants to give her book away, 10 questions every first-time home buyer should ask themselves. That's available on her website. All someone has to do is click on the button for it, enter their email address and their zip code, and boom, it gets emailed to them. Now Sue has an email contact. She knows what part of town they live in, and she's building her list in her contacts. Product awareness. There's no better way to raise awareness of products than to do little giveaways or little promotions with them. Buy one, get one free, or first 10 people to do something in a month, or first person to answer a poll question, whatever it happens to be. It gets people excited, it gets anticipation going, and it costs you very, very little. I have to back up for a minute because I hear this all the time. A lot of people initially kind of recoil when I suggest giveaways and promotions and everything else. And I say to people all the time, and submitting for reviews to something other than major publications, and I say to people all the time, I say, even radio is a great example. I have clients come to me all the time and say, well, why am I doing this small radio station in, Boise, Idaho? And I turn around and say, okay, let me ask you a different way. Are you able to do that radio show from your car or your home or your office? Yes. How long does it take you? Maybe 15 minutes. How many people minimum do you think have to be listening at any given time to that radio show in Boise, Idaho for that radio show to stay in business? 5,000, 10,000 listeners at any given time? Okay, let me ask you a different way. If I told you you could have 15 minutes with a captive audience to talk about things that are of interest to you and have someone in there mentioning your book multiple times during that 15-minute period, and there were 5,000 to 10,000 people in that room, would you drive to go do that? Sure they would. How far would you drive? Would you drive an hour to go do that? Yeah, I would do that. I mean, if I have that kind of an audience. Well, geez, then why would you not do a 15-minute radio interview where you don't have to drive anywhere, where you can do it from the comfort of your home in your pajamas if you want to have the same captive audience, to be able to talk about something of interest to you, and to have a host on there who's going to mention your book multiple times? It's a no-brainer. That same analogy can be applied to submitting for reviews. That same analogy can be applied to giveaways. It costs very little to do these things, very, very little. And you say, well, if I'm giving away this publication, okay, great. How much money would it cost you to have a banner ad on a particular website? Or how much would it cost you to have an advertisement in one of these review publications? A lot more than it costs to mail a book. Way more than it costs to mail a book. So while I encourage everyone to pay attention to their bottom line, and to pinch their pennies, and to count them closely, think pragmatically and don't shortchange yourself with a lot of these opportunities. With giveaways and promotions, do have a strategy and measurable purpose to each giveaway and promotion. Don't just do them for the sake of doing them. Do be willing to give some stuff away for free. Don't be too aggressive in the upsell. Once you've given something away for free, be casual about it. It's better to ask people's opinions initially than to simply try to then right away sell them something. You kind of have to soft roll these things. With specialty marketing as an activity, again, a lot of you listening here are APSS members or interested in becoming members, and specialty market sales are a great way to make money off of the product you're bringing to marketplace, especially with books. With specialty marketing, the purpose is to create bulk marketing or sales of your product. That simply means that you're selling a large portion of your 20 books, 300 books, 500 books, 10,000 books, whatever it happens to be. And the larger the number, usually the greater the discount that you're offering the people. It helps build product awareness. It creates non-retail sales and profits for your book. Oftentimes, without having to go through retail, you are saving on the wholesale discount. So even if you're discounting your book, you're not giving up the wholesale discount in addition to that discount. And it can be packaged with other services, products, such as paid speaking engagements. I do this all the time when I'm pitching my clients for paid speaking gigs. When they have books, I can turn around and let's say their speaking fee is $2,500 or $5,000. I can turn around to the venue once the venue is pretty committed to them, and I say, look, they've got this great book that's perfect for your audience. You've got 100 people in your audience. We can, for $500 more, we can provide complimentary book for everybody in your audience. And a lot of times they love that because then their audience gets to take something home with them as well, and they're giving a gift away as well as just having a speaker. In other cases, if I want to charge a little bit more at the beginning with a proposal for a speaker, I'll turn around and say, great, Jane Smith is excited to do this, excited to give you a proposal. It'll be $3,500, but that will also include a complimentary copy of her book for everybody in your audience. By doing that, they feel like they're getting something special. So there's a lot of different ways from a specialty marketing perspective you can work the book into your overall model. Do be sure to have a publishing and distribution model that suits specialty market sales. Print on demand can very much do that, but you also want to make sure that with print on demand, you are also positioned to handle higher orders of books. So let's say someone comes to you and wants 50 copies of your book and they need it by next week. That's great for print on demand. But if someone comes to you and they want 5,000 copies of your book, you want to be in a position to also use an offset printer to fulfill that order, because you're going to be paying, probably 1/10 of what you'd be paying for print on demand for that many copies of your book. They won't be able to be fulfilled as quickly, but you'll make a lot more money per sale. So you want to make sure that you have both things in place to be able to do that. Do you recognize that breaking even or just a small profit with a specialty market sale can be a huge long-term value to you in reaching your target audience at no cost? What I mean by that is, if you have the Padres, and the Padres want to buy 10,000 copies of your book to give away to the first 10,000 people that come to the stadium one day, and your book costs you $3 to produce, and they're offering you $3 for each book, take it. Take it all day. Because what that means is, for no cost to you, breaking even, they are paying for the production of your book and putting it in the hands of 10,000 people. Those 10,000 people are potential mavens for you. Mavens in terms of being the people that promote your book to other people. Obviously, and still to this day, the most powerful form of advertising is word of mouth. So if you're able to put your book in the hands of 10,000 people at no cost to you, granted no profit to you, but no cost to you, Do it all day, every day, and twice on Sundays, because it is a great marketing tool. I would suggest that to anyone and everyone in every possible position. This is not to say that you don't want to try to make a profit, but if you have an opportunity to do something like that and the profit doesn't exist, but a break-even point does, again, take advantage of it, because there are far much more upside to it than downside. Do you think outside the box with specialty markets? What I mean by that is a lot of times we underestimate the specialty markets that are available to us. What I would suggest to you is sit down and start thinking about your target audience. Start thinking about a specific person. Where do they go? What do they do? What types of groups are they a part of? Kind of make up this person in your mind. When you make up this person in your mind, you're going to start to think about what their daily activities are, the type of groups they're involved with, and everything else. And that'll help kind of expand that box for you and think outside the box in terms of target specialty markets. Don't produce your product in bulk prior to having orders. There is no reason to go to an offset printer and have 5,000 copies of your book printed so they can sit in a warehouse, or they can sit in a fulfillment house, or they can sit in your garage. The industry has transitioned so much, and you're able to fulfill these orders so quickly now that there's absolutely no reason to do that, and it'll be a waste of time and money to you. Advertising activities. Again, there's pluses and minuses to advertising. I'm a much stronger proponent of PR and marketing because it tends to be free, quote unquote free, than of advertising. I think there are some good examples of when advertising works, but bang for your buck, I think you're more likely to have more success with strategic PR and marketing activities than with advertising overall, because we are naturally trained to tune out advertising. We see it all the time. Think about yourself when you hear a radio ad or a commercial on TV, if anyone even watches live TV anymore, and so on. Even when you're flipping through a magazine, we kind of just flip past the ads pretty quickly, and we don't even notice them anymore, and we're trained to do that. The only place this is yet to be true is with online advertising. Yeah, pop-ups and banner ads are pretty obvious to all of us now, but anybody who's on Facebook or anything else, we get roped into some of these ads pretty quickly, not even realizing it's an advertisement. So there's some strategy to that. That being said, advertising still does have its place, and it does have its place with specific projects, and you just want to be smart about it. So let's talk about radio advertising for a minute. When it comes to radio advertising, their purpose is to reach target audience on a local, regional, or national level with terrestrial radio. That's your AM, FM. Reach audiences on a worldwide level through internet radio or podcasts, and reach finally target audiences even through satellite radio. What you'll find with satellite radio shows is the advertising cost is much lower, surprisingly enough. You can get on a lot of those shows for much less than you can on terrestrial radio, but the audience is super targeted. They have satellite radio shows on fishing. They have it on, politics. They have it on very targeted topics. So if you're on a radio station like MSNBC Radio, you can kind of get an idea of who your listeners are. If you're on a specific show on, let's say, the National Geographic radio station or something like that, that has to do with fishing or hunting or whatever it happens to be, the audience you're getting. So the cool thing about satellite radio is it's a little less expensive, and you can be much more finely targeted with it. And another purpose is to promote product, service, events, etc. And lastly, to induce a specific call to action. Buy the book, read my blog, whatever it happens to be. With radio, do you have a specific purpose and strategy with any advertising? In fact, this is going to be true. I should say this. This is going to be true for every single one of these. So I'm going to read it once or twice, and then that's it. So the do's and don'ts. Do you have a specific purpose and strategy with any advertising and the ability to track and measure results? That's huge. Do you budget for advertising in your business plan if it is something you will be considering? Even if you're just considering it, plan ahead for it. And don't overcommit to an advertising plan without an initial trial period where you can gauge results. A lot of these places will try to get you to commit for 12 months or a big package or something like that. Just pound on those brakes and say, look, I'm willing to try this. I'd like to do it for a trial period, and if it works, great. I'm planning to invest more. But don't let them oversell you on a time period. The whole, well, you need to give it 6 months to see if it's going to be effective is nonsense. A couple of weeks? Yeah. A day or two? No. But a couple of weeks? Yes. But don't commit to 12 months. Don't commit to a huge plan or anything else. Give it time. Give it a reasonable period of time, but not too much time. Television advertising is very similar to radio advertising. You reach a target audience on a local, regional, or national level. Reach audience on a worldwide level through even internet TV channels or stations. And you can reach finally target audiences through specific internet TV channels, not just the stations. You promote a product or service or events, etc. And it's also used to induce a specific call to action. Again, I'm not going to repeat the do's and don'ts because it's the exact same for all of these. But the idea of TV, again, is think about what you're trying to do. From my perspective and from my experience, I have noticed that local TV advertising is far more effective for local events than trying to do national or regional advertising. You'll see things like infomercials in the middle of the night for, the shark vacuum or things like that. And they dump a lot of money into that, but they have really deep pockets to be able to do that. And those infomercials run for like 30 to 40 minutes. Most of us in the situation we're in, that's not kind of an ideal or targeted model for us. But if you have an event or something else of interest that is local and you can get on local TV, the advertising tends to be relatively inexpensive to produce and to have up there. And it might behoove you to do that. You'll see that with people that are doing local seminars and things like that, and the same thing with radio and so forth. But again, ask yourself, is the money I'm spending on advertising better used to garner and do PR and marketing activities instead? The next on the list is print and online advertising. You reach target audience on a local, regional, national level, reach audiences on a worldwide level through online print publications. You reach finally target audiences through topic and target-specific publications, which is really nice. It's kind of similar to satellite radio in that way. And you promote products, services, events, etc., and you can use it to induce a specific call to action. Again, with print and online print advertising, when I say online print advertising, that's the online version of print publications are referred to as online print publications. It's a little obnoxious, but that's what they refer to it as. So there's the Wall Street Journal, then there's the Wall Street Journal Online. The Wall Street Journal Online is the online print version of the Wall Street Journal. Again, with each of these places, you have to look at who my target audience is, how many of them will I actually be reaching, and how effective is it. The biggest challenge with any type of advertising, and I go back to this from the do's and don'ts, is how am I measuring the relative success of this investment? ROI, return on investment, is a very important question to continuously ask yourself. And with regard to advertising, you really have to have something in place to gauge that ROI. Obviously, if you run a print ad or a TV ad or a radio ad, and all of a sudden you see a huge boost in sales, well, it's all things being equal and without any other promotional activities being done, it's pretty easy to deduce that that had an effect on it. But that's usually not the type of crazy spike we see. So when it comes to advertising, I much prefer advertising that has some type of simple call to action that drives people to my website, or something else where I can measure, visits to my website, or something else where there is a measurable way of looking at success. Next is traditional or digital direct advertising, something we're all probably familiar with because we get plenty of junk mail. Engage people locally, regionally, or nationally with direct mailers and email campaigns. This helps promote a product, services, events, etc., and is used to induce a specific call to action. This is actually not a bad way to go. There are lists you can buy to email people that companies spend a lot of time pooling and resourcing and putting together. So if you are a realtor in San Diego and you want to reach everybody in the 92101 zip code, you can actually go to your post office, create an advertisement, and they will, for a fee, put your mailer in the mail to everyone in the 92101 zip code. And that's why we all get so much junk mail. And you go, why am I getting this junk mail? Because the local post office has been paid to send you junk mail. So you know how you treat your junk mail at home. I know how I treat mine. You have to decide whether or not you think you can make something that would be would stand out enough to not be dumped directly in the trash. The same thing can be said with email campaigns. Some email campaigns are super effective, some are less effective. Depends on how much of it feels like junk mail versus not junk mail. Again, the thing I do like about digital advertising is that it is easier to gauge levels of success. And frankly, digital advertising, whether it's digital radio, online TV channels, online print advertising, and so forth, you're one step closer to people being able to click and order your book than through any type of traditional media. If I'm in my car listening to radio, actually this has happened to me multiple times. I'll be in my car, I'll be listening to NPR, I'll listen to a great interview, be like, oh, I really want to buy that book, or I really want to visit that person's website. Well, guess what? By the time I get to the office and I jump into my work, or I get home and I got my kids to take care of, or what have you, I've either forgotten the name of the person I listened to, or the title of their book, or forgotten it altogether, and I just don't take that next step. If I'm involved in some type of advertising or marketing or PR, where I'm exposed to something I'm interested in directly online, well, guess what? The hyperlink is right there for me to go and figure it out. There's no delay. There's no second or third step I have to go through. There's no forgetfulness. It's right there for me. So again, all things being equal, if I'm going for advertising, I'm going for advertising that's closest to the net result that I want to accomplish, which in this case, let's say, is buying the book. I'm far closer to that than I would be with any type of traditional advertising. Social media and digital advertising, I see the most amount of success in the world of advertising right now. I see the most amount of success with this. It has to be done well. It has to be done strategically. But I do see a lot of success with this. This is Google ads. This is Facebook ads. This is letting people know about your product based on being able to identify them based on their interests and so forth. Facebook, Google, they all allow you to do this now. And it's relatively inexpensive. In fact, you can set your own budget. It can be $10 a day. It can be $1,000 a day. It can be $1 million a day. It can be a lot in between. So I really do like the idea of social media and digital advertising if you have a specific call to action that caters to it. What you have to ask yourself before you pay for Facebook advertising or Google advertising or so forth is, if you were looking for you, go with me on this, I don't want to get too existential on you, but if you were looking for you, meaning let's say you're a CPA, am I going to go to Facebook and search for a CPA, or am I going to go to Google and search for a CPA? I'm going to go to Google and search for a CPA. If I am looking up information on domestic violence, am I going to go to Facebook, or am I going to go to Google? Now, if I'm looking for meetup groups that specialize in, suddenly single after 50 and dating, I'm more likely to go to Facebook for something like that than I am to Google. So understand what your product is, understand what you're selling, understand where your target audience is, and where would you go to look for you? So that's how you kind of help yourself narrow down where you should go for advertising and the type of advertising you should do when it comes to social media and digital advertising. Last but not least is co-op when it comes to advertising. With co-op, you have the ability to pay to have your book placed in certain places or have your product placed in certain places. When you go into a bookstore, the books that are on the end cap, guess what? Publishers pay for those books to be on the end cap. Those tables that have the featured items during the holiday season, people pay to be on those tables. So the idea of co-op is to pay to have your product placed in a specific location that is locations that are frequented by your target audience. In this case, you should set a budget aside for that if you want to do it. I'm going to tell you right now, the holiday season is the most expensive time. So if you're going to look to do it for your product, the holiday season may not be the best time to look to pay for it, but it's certainly another option for advertising. 5 activities for platform development and product promotion. Again, what we're sitting here trying to do is figure out what's the best way to effectively do publicity. And publicity can be found through PR, can be found through marketing, can be found through advertising. I'm going to just give you 5 basic activities that anybody can do, and you can do these on a shoestring budget if you want to, or you can do them far more elaborately. The first is brand yourself and or your product. Anybody can do this, right? Jay Izzo, the Internet Doctor. Gina DeLappa, America's Ultimate Reminders Coach. Chicken Soup for the Chicken Soup series. I mean, these are ways people brand themselves. The Bosch series. I mean, there's so many different ways you can brand yourself. One of the common themes among most great brands or products is that they are easily referred to and recognized by a branded description. Think of your favorite commercials. Think of Pop Pop Fizz Fizz. Think of all the different things you can think about that are very well branded. It just takes some ingenuity, this takes some creativity, but anybody can do it, and it's free to do. So the first activity I would suggest that you do is branding yourself and or your product. And the reason I put this first is because if you're going to do byline articles, if you're going to do radio interviews, if you're going to do any other activities, whether it's PR, marketing, or advertising, you're going to want to refer back to your brand. And if you haven't branded yourself or your product, there's nothing to refer back to. The second activity is to create a scalable website. More often than not, whether we're doing PR marketing or advertising, the website is going to be the hub for you. When I pitch producers for media, they oftentimes go get their information from the person's website. Book reviewers do the same thing, and so on and so forth. Plus, a lot of the activities you want to do in terms of interacting with social media, blogging, giveaways, promotions, specialty market sales, they all will be governed through your website. With your website, this could be an entire class by itself, but I'll just give you the quick breakdown. Immediate recognition of who you are and what you are within the first 5 seconds. People should be able to go to your website and see this is about accounting, this is about real estate, this is about fiction writing. Whatever it happens to be, people should be able to know that within the first 5 seconds. Social proof. Social proof is a way of immediately giving yourself credibility or veracity. As seen on TV is a great example of social proof. Oh, yeah, that's the item that's been on TV. If you blog for the Huffington Post, having the little Huffington Post icon right there and says, and you go to some people's websites, they have a little icon of CNN, this place, as seen on CNN, blah, blah, blah. That's social proof. This is who I am. Social proof can be endorsements. Social proof can be articles written in major publications. It can be radio interviews on major radio stations and so forth. But you want to have social proof on your website. Visitor interface and data capture points. You want to give people a reason to come to your website. You want to give people a reason to take an action on your website. You want to give people a reason to keep coming back. And that's where visitor interface, the ability for people to comment, the ability for people to follow or share content, giveaways where people are giving you their emails in order to download, 10 free steps to, losing weight tomorrow or whatever it happens to be. Functionalities and components based on what you're trying to accomplish. A lot of times we have these makeshift websites that aren't scalable so that we can't do giveaways, we can't do data capture points. So sit down, think about what you want your website to be able to do, and even if you aren't going to put that as an element in your website just yet, make sure you're building on a platform that allows you to scale up to that. And regular production of new dynamic content. Your bio, your picture, all your static content on your website that rarely ever changes doesn't do anything for search engine optimization. Incoming links, visitors to your site, and new frequently changed dynamic content is what helps with SEO. And that's your blog, that's new content, new pictures, new written stuff, and so forth that goes up on your website. That helps raise your search engine optimization. And we talked about making a website where people regularly want to come back. Well, if they keep coming back to a website and I see the same content there every time I come back, well, there's no point in me keep coming back because it's the same stuff over and over again. Number 3, establish a regular voice and a schedule and plan, okay? It doesn't matter where you decide to have your voice to a certain degree initially, but you need to establish it. So you can write columns or articles or blogs for external publications. You can do it for your own website. You can become a regular on a podcast or a radio show. You can be a regular contributor to local TV. You can regularly do webinars that you offer to external sites that will make your webinar available for free or for a cost to people. You can do seminars and so forth. To me, it doesn't matter what you do, but it matters that you do it well and that you do it regularly. When I say develop a schedule or a plan, if you have specific topics you're going to write about, you know when you're going to write about them, and you know the type of content you're going to produce, well then, when you have downtime, you can produce that well in advance, as opposed to feeling like you're under the gun once a week every Monday to get it done by Tuesday morning for publication. No matter what you do, come up with a schedule and a plan that's reasonable. Don't be the person who as part of their New Year's resolution in January, says they're going to go to the gym every day a week, for an hour and a half, because within 2 weeks you're going to burn out. It's much better to say, I'm going to go to the gym 3 days a week and I'm going to put a half an hour in each time I'm there. So be smart about it, but develop that regular voice. It's going to help you in all other aspects of what you're trying to accomplish. It's going to help you develop radio segments. It's going to help you develop article topics. It's going to help you develop speaking topics. It's going to help you with anything that you want to accomplish with regard to your overall business model. Activity 4, have an effective social media presence. What I mean by that is brand consistency. We want to see the same type of branding on your website that we see on your social media and so forth. Choose the right platform or platforms. Instagram is not for everyone. Twitter is not for everyone. Facebook is not for everyone. There's, so many different social media platforms out there. Again, if you were looking for you, where would you look? Ask yourself that question and try not to get too confused with the existential aspect of it. But truly ask yourself that question. What type of person is your target? Where do they go? What do they do? Where do they hang out? What type of social media are they on? And so forth. That's going to help you a lot. Have a plan, okay? You should not be overwhelmed by social media where you're putting in 2 hours a day on social media just to keep up. Social media should be much more simplified for you than that. You should be putting 20 to 40 minutes in maximum per day in order to effectively address your blog and your social media platforms. Contribute regularly. Just because you're contributing regularly doesn't mean you have to put a lot of time in. Contributing can be sharing tweets. It can be repurposing other content. It can be retweeting other content. It could be commenting on a movie you recently saw. It can be a lot. It can be posting memes or quotes. This is where having a plan comes in. Okay, Monday I'm going to post a recipe. Wednesdays I'm going to repost an interview from an external site. Friday I'm going to post an original piece about, like, an editorial piece from yourself. Have some type of plan and stick with it. Network outside the box. Okay, we talked about this, the example I gave you with the interviews with people that are already established and already have a following. Think outside the box when it comes to social networking. That same model can be applied to any book, any genre across the board because, well, I shouldn't say anyone, but if you've written a book that has a target audience, they're out there on social media. So you can use that same interview type model for nearly any genre or any group. Activity 5, reviews, giveaways, and promotions. Pitch and then submit reviews. We talked about this. With the exception of trade reviewers, pitch the book and then submit only when you get requests for it because it allows you to follow up, allows you to have a specific contact, and it allows you to have much more control over the product going out rather than just blind mailing stuff. Choose the appropriate venues, okay? You shouldn't be pitching venues that aren't appropriate for your book to review your book. Now, that being said, what I have found with most books I've promoted is that there are venues that I never would have thought would be good targets for the book that come back and say, yeah, I'd love the book. That being said, if you're pitching and then only submitting based on the requests for the book, be a little creative in who you pitch. Don't be so tight that you're like, oh, I'm never going to pitch to this group. See what the response is. The worst case scenario is you get a no or a no thank you, and you don't send the book to them. But this is the power of pitching and then submitting. You can test out some of those other venues. Think mavens and word of mouth. The most powerful form of advertising is word of mouth. What you want is you want people that will promote your book on your behalf. You want people that will become advocates for your book. Again, I go back to the radio station. I don't care if there's 5,000 people listening or 50,000 people listening. All of them are of value to me. And the idea of the cost of sending one book, if 500 people a month visit a website or someone's blog and they have a regular, unique visitors for a month of 500 people a month, and it costs me one book to reach those 500 people, absolutely I'm going to do it. Because I only need one person to buy a book to more than make up for my cost of submitting that book for review. And I never know who that one person is going to be, or who those 10 people are going to be, or those 20 people are going to be, or how it's going to create a snowball effect for me. Think safety schools. I go back to the whole Oprah thing. When Oprah was doing her daytime show, everybody wanted to be on it. And she was the quintessential major maven. If she said she liked something, it became a bestseller. Didn't matter what it was, it became a bestseller. But those smaller mavens are equally powerful for you. All of us are less likely to get an endorsement from Oprah than we are to get an endorsement from a smaller publication. But those smaller publications are equally valuable in building up momentum. So take advantage of them too. Think safety schools. I'm going to apply to Harvard. I'm going to submit to Oprah. I'm also going to apply to my local state school. I'm also going to pitch my local blogs and my smaller blogs to see if they're interested in reviews as well. Give, and give some more. Okay? The best way to get something is to give something. I always tell people, you give a little, you'll get a little. You give a lot, you get a lot. Don't be afraid to give books away. Be strategic, be smart about it, but don't be afraid to give books away. I hope you found at least a few nuggets of information in what I had to share with you today. As always, please feel free to contact me with any questions. My name is Jared Kuritz. My email is jkuritz@strategiespr.com. You can also reach me at www.strategiespr.com. Thank you very much and have a great day.